in the latter part of the debate about the input stuff that Gary mentioned, and the input, just so we will get a little preview, the input is pretty simple, that everyone's vote should count the same. Everyone's vote should count exactly the same. And they don't right now in the Electoral College. A very incredibly simple proposition in a democracy. But the first question is, has the Electoral College served a constructive purpose? I'm a student of political institutions. I can't disagree that it is not. I have to agree that it has served constructive purposes. Overall, my notes say here, yes, but. So let me talk a little bit about this, because if it didn't have the output notion, then the argument fails on its face, and we better go on to something else. The question is there a better alternative? Is it the best system possible? Now, Gary kind of glossed over the framing part, and he actually may know this better than I, but let's talk a little bit about the Electoral College, because I think we do tend to deify the framers, and often with good reason. They had a pretty good sense of what they were doing when they framed this Constitution. They were an amazing body of individuals and constructed remarkable institutions. This balance of power. Sometimes they filled in the blanks with the Congress. Sometimes they left the document pretty wide open, as with the judiciary. Sometimes they acted like politicians. Frightening. They were very, very good politicians. So let's talk a little bit about how the Electoral College got into play. It's a compromise. The Electoral College was batted about at the Constitutional Convention for almost the entirety, selecting the President of the United States may have been as important a job as the Constitutional Convention had, because they all come from legislatures. They knew what they wanted to do with legislatures. They got tired when it came to the judiciary, so they just wrote a very brief Article 3 and said, let John Marshall figure it out. But when it came to the presidency, they knew it was important, but they were inventing something. They were inventing something that they really didn't know quite what they were doing. They knew that short-term the Congress was going to be very powerful. They knew short-term that George Washington would be the first president. After that, they didn't know much. And they were worried. They were worried that they would create a president that was too powerful, or they were worried they would create a president who wasn't powerful enough to run this nation in the wake of the Articles of Confederation. So I think that the construction of the executive was the most difficult task they had, and in many ways it demonstrated their brilliance, that they got it right, that they could, 200 years later, we may be fighting about the powers of the presidency, but it's in the context of what these guys did. Once saying that, they were getting toward the end of the convention. They'd fiddle around with this, how to select a president, the entire time. They knew they didn't want the Congress to select him. That was going to be too close to the Congress. And honestly, they didn't want the people to decide. In part on philosophical reasons, in part on communication reasons. They wanted the states to have a role, and they put together what is often described as a jury-rigged compromise. Robert Dahl notes that it's the Electoral College, a democratic theorist, small d, democratic theorist, probably the greatest small d democratic theorist of the modern political science age. Dahl says the work of the Electoral College is the work of baffled and confused men who finally settle on a solution more out of desperation than confidence. If you know anything about legislatures, what happens at the very end of a legislative session? What is their greatest desire? Get out of town. Everybody, they were ready to get out of town. And here's one of their most important decisions is the Electoral College. What are they going to do? So they put this thing together that really has no great philosophical, theoretical background, but they have created a Senate. They have created a federal system, and they kind of merge them into the electoral college. And the individual states, particularly the small states are very important here throughout this argument, are pretty happy because in the end they get a little bonus in the Electoral College, but they get a huge bonus if it goes to the House of Representatives, where every state has one vote. Nobody talks about the possibility of the election being thrown into the House of Representatives. Nobody ever talks about that. It has not happened since 1824, but if you want to talk about lack of representation and chaos, throwing the election into the House of Representatives is a great candidate. Anyway, we didn't really deliberate too much on the Electoral College. They put a variety of plans up. Finally, select one that does win a majority, and they get out of town. The framers get a lot of stuff right. None of them foresaw political parties. And as Gary points out, that within a few years, the framework of political parties is there. And that affects the election of presidents dramatically. In 1800, it affected it. So you had this tie between Jefferson and Burr, fought out eventually, with Jefferson eventually winning the presidency. But has the Electoral College conservative productive purpose? Sure. It's delivered results. The outputs argument is very strong. These results are seen as legitimate. Witness 2000. George Bush, the moment the Supreme Court made its decision, was seen by and large as a legitimate president. It's worked in difficult circumstances in which there have been contested elections. At the same time, it has disenfranchised many people in many states that systematically vote one way or the other. The loser of the popular vote, the person who loses the popular vote, can win. The only election in the hundreds of thousands of elections in America where that can occur, and there is the continuing loaded gun of the contingent election thrown into the House of Representatives. So the Electoral College has delivered to an extent, and I'm a fan of understanding political institutions. On the other hand, the history of American politics has been of great democratization, of changing the Constitution, changing the electorate, broadening it, democratizing it, and under those circumstances, the Electoral College remains an anachronism.